Hello guys, you may have seen my video now that I uploaded about my Alienware 17. I just received it, and I bought the model that has a terabyte hard drive and I think it's a 60 gig cache drive, or it seems to be, and it's I think it's an 80 gig cache, but it's partitioned to 60 with 10 gig for storage. It's just a little light on micro SATA SSD that is under the keyboard on this laptop, and yeah, it's kind of weak. I haven't really used it. Apparently it does work. However, we all know that caching on any SSD is never as good as the real thing. Hence this. Yes, I have an Samsung 840 EVO. I mentioned it in my unboxing that it was my old laptop used this thing. I bought it for my old laptop and then I took it out before I sold it because I wanted to keep it because it was quite expensive and a very good SSD. Obviously I'm going to put it in this thing to try and accelerate the storage. So I thought I'd do a guide on how to do that. So what you want to do is before you want to clone the hard drive to the new SSD on an Alienware 17 is you need to disable the caching on that SSD. And by the way, once you've done that, I think you can just format it and use it as storage. But yeah, so you can see here this. If you go look here at the, so you can see here if you just look at the right-hand side of the screen, although it's art affecting a bit on the camera here, but you can see it does say 75 gigabytes RAID array, and that is a RAID 0 data volume at 11 gigs and a 64 big cache volume, and the system drive underneath is accelerated. Now, what's really interesting about that is you can actually disable the caching, and that's what you need to do. You need to disable the caching before you can do the clone to the SSD, because obviously I don't want an SSD to cache an SSD because it makes no sense. So yeah, I mean, you can, if you just look at this, you can actually see here that it is being cached. You can see that acceleration mode says enhanced. So yeah, you can manage this thing by changing it. So what I'm going to do is, you can see it does say here on the screen, activate device SATA. What does it say? Accelerated device SATA disk on controller 0 port 0. Disable acceleration. And what that does is it stops caching. So that's exactly what we want to do. We want to disable acceleration. And as you can see from this message, it comes up and says, are you sure you want to disable acceleration on this disk or volume? Yes, you do. You can always set it back up again if you need to, but let's be honest, I'm putting an SSD in here, this one, so I won't be doing that. So yeah, I want to disable that. It may take a minute to disable because I think it synchronizes files with the hard drive. But yeah, it does take a little while, but it should do. It's a cool, by the way, this rapid storage technology caching is very, very good, actually. It's a very good feature. And as you can see there, it says acceleration was disabled. So now you're pretty much ready to go, actually, in terms of cloning the stuff to SSD. You can do it now, but what we're going to do is, it does say here that you can delete the cache data and volume and return it to the storage drive to pass through, which is what I'm exactly going to do. So once you've disabled the cache and allowed it to sync with the hard drive, I'm just going to delete the cache. So it says resetting the solid state drive used as a cache device to available will remove the cache data. If the configuration also includes a data volume, its data volume will remain accessible on the disk, which is fine. So if you do have some stuff on the 10 gig partition when you buy it, you can always disable it, which is nice, and it doesn't affect the files on there. So we're just going to reset it by clicking yes. So yeah, once you've done that, you can then see it does come up with a pop-up here, and it says volume dev cache is no longer present on system. And what you can do you can go back to the status tab on here, and you can see it says storage system view, and there's the SATA disk, which is a system disk, and then there's this SATA SSD at 75 gigs, which is fine. So yeah, that's it. So that's how you restore it back to not using the cache. So yeah, so before you upgrade to a full-sized SSD like this is what you need to do. If you don't do this, you might not be able to boot the computer after you do the clone. So or you might not be able to boot to the SSD. So you definitely need to disable the caching software. The benefits of an SSD over a caching SSD is, caching SSDs don't give the same amount of performance as a real SSD like this one does. So yeah, if you want to really get the very best performance out of your Alienware, I suggest you upgrade to an SSD, although don't buy one from Dell because they're really horribly expensive. It's much cheaper to buy one separately. In fact, I bought this a long time ago. Like I said, it was actually from my old laptop, and I decided to just keep hold of it and then use it in this one when I got hold of it. So yeah, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just go to disk management and just check the situation with disks, and as you can see, it's now swapped over. So this 64 gig cache that was previously used by the Intel Intel Rapid Storage Technology program is now unallocated, so you can actually extend this SSD to here and use all the 64 gigs of space that was taken up by the cache. And then this is the disk that's already in it, the 1 terabyte boot disk. So now I've done that, I'm ready to do the clone. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to shut this down like so, and I'm going to put the SSD in and then clone the disk to it. So let's get on with it. Okay guys, so after you shut down the laptop, you're going to want to, first of all, you're going to want to unscrew the bottom. Now, you may be thinking, well, this is horrible. I've literally had this out of the box now for about an hour, so I've only received this an hour ago, and you're probably thinking, the first thing he does is open it. What a terrible thing. What about the warranty, etc, etc. Don't worry about the warranty. The Dell Alienware warranty is very, very good. They understand that people who have Alienware PCs probably want to upgrade them, probably want to open them and put new RAM in and put new SSDs in frequently. So, and they know that they're probably going to do that before the year's warranty actually runs out. So, the warranty for Alienware 17 Alienware products actually still covers it if you've opened it. It doesn't void the warranty if you open it. The only thing that they do say is that they don't cover any parts you've replaced, only the stuff that came with the system. So, for example, they're not going to cover the warranty on this SSD, which is upside down, because, well, I bought it. But everything else in the system will still be covered, and I haven't voided the warranty by opening it. So let's get to it. So, let's just unscrew this thing, which screwdriver isn't magnetic, so its screws aren't coming with it. Put those screws safely to one side. This doesn't want to come out, this one. There we go. I think you should just slide it forward and it should open, I think, as far as I can tell. Oh, there we go, yeah, it is sliding forward very slowly, but yeah, it does slide forward and come off. So 2 screws and we're in. So yeah, it seems very, very strange when I'm opening this for the first time, and literally I've not had this for more than 2 hours yet. So yeah, it's very strange, but that's the way that it is. So what you need to do is, so the hard is put the SSD in. Now the SSD is here. The hard drive that we boot from is already here, which is fine. So graphics card, be careful with that because it might be very hot, especially if you've been playing games recently. So yeah, don't touch that unless you know it's cool. And also be careful with that because it might be very, very hot. It's actually not at this moment, but do be careful with it because they get very, very hot. So here it is. So that's the hard drive, the boot drive. So you want to leave that where it is. What you want to do is you just want to put the SSD in this spare slot over here. So again, remember, you'll only have this slot spare if you have decided to buy your Alienware with the cache drive installed, the cache SSD. So yeah, it's not too big of a deal, but like I said, they do. Oh, there's an extra screw here. It is a little bit annoying, but yeah, I mean they are kind of expensive, so you know you might not want to do this the moment you get the laptop, but it makes more sense financially because, like I said, it's much cheaper to buy an SSD separate and then put it in yourself rather than buy it from Dell. It's incredibly cheap for me because, like I said, this is actually out of an older laptop of mine, my old Alienware that I just sold. I just kept the SSD because the SSD I bought very recently. In fact, I only bought it in October of last year, so yeah, it's not very old. It's probably still in warranty actually. But anyway, so yeah, then what you want to do is, like I said, unscrew those. But now, just unplug the battery for me. You don't have to, but it's a matter of good practice. Yeah, unplug the battery. You can always plug it back in afterwards, and that means that nothing's live. So and you're not going to turn it on by accident or anything. So, oh, there's actually another screw there. So, oops, so unscrew this. Okay. This should just come out, and that's it. It's just a little plate, and it's got some nice dampening foam there, just to keep it straight. Most interestingly though, it actually comes with 4 screws that you need to screw another drive in, so that's a nice touch. So anyway, jump cut there, yeah, distracted. Anyway, so yeah, well, nice touch by the way, you get the 4 screws that you need to screw it into the bracket attached to it, so that's kind of nice. So just gonna get the SSD. Now, like I said, this isn't new, it's been in my old laptop, so I don't want formatting and stuff. But yeah, I'm going to clone this to my new, there's the SSD, I'm going to clone my new drive. I'm going to clone my hard drive to this now, because I know a lot of people buy an SSD and they just reinstall Windows. Well, you don't have to do that, by the way. It doesn't impact performance at all if you just clone your old copy of Windows to your new one. And usually Windows will detect it's been installed on an SSD. Even if you clone it to an SSD, it will still detect it's an SSD and enable trim and all the rest of it that it needs. So yeah, it's not really a big deal. Let's hope I get that the right way up. Let's see what... Yeah, that's fine, that's the right way. So I just want to make sure I had it the right way up. Okay. Putting the screws in here. You don't have to put all 4 in, you can just put 2 in, 1 on each side, or maybe opposite, so 1 here, like I've done. But yeah, I'm going to put all 4 in. No doubt the screws will only go missing if you don't put them all in, they'll end up getting lost or something. So it's much better if you just... Number 1, use the right size screwdriver, as I should have done in the first place. And number 2, screw them all in as they should be. And yeah, don't over tighten them, because you'll never get them back out again. They'll just damage your screwdrivers and the screws themselves. So remember, I mean, it's very unlikely that these are ever going to come out of here. So only unless you unscrew them, of course. But so there we go. Don't over tighten them. That's all you have to do. It's kind of a noob's guide, I suppose. I suppose many people will already know how to do these things anyway, but I just thought I'd show you how to disable the caching on Windows, because I know a lot of people, what they're probably going to do is they're probably going to have to reinstall Windows on this thing, but to get it to work. But I know that you don't have to do that, so I thought it'd be worth doing it, doing this video. But yeah, so then to get this in, by the way, if you see the SATA connector here, if you just put your fingers around the 2 prongs here, and then pull that up gently, it should come out. Once you've done that, just connect it up like so to the drive. It just pushes on, and then what you can do is just push it down like so. Don't push on the drive because you don't want to break the SATA connector, so just push down on top of the connector to make sure it slots in. And yeah, once you've done that, you can put all the screws back in. with the right size screwdriver this time. You put all the screws back in to the caddy surrounds. That's all there is to it. So there's not a great deal to this. It's pretty easy. I think anybody could do this. It's not. You don't really need any technical knowledge. All you need to do is know how to use a screwdriver, and you know, I can guarantee you everybody does. There isn't much technical knowledge at all required for this. Remember, once again, don't over tighten them because you'll never get them back out if you do. And then all you do is connect the battery back up, like so. Just make sure it's in properly, otherwise it'll not going to power on. Once you've done that, all you need to do is get the back, like so, and make sure those wires are tucked down there so they're not going to get in the way. That's the battery wire, by the way. Make sure that doesn't get in the way. All you need to do is just gently slide this thing back on. It should go on there pretty easily. Yeah, and there you go. That's on, so all I need to do is put these two screws in now, which I'm going to screw in with this screwdriver. Like I said, don't over tighten them. Just make sure they're nice and tight on the outside because they might come out. So make sure these are tight, but don't over tighten them. Like that. So for example, I'll now be able to get these out pretty easy, like that, but yeah, you want to make sure that they're in there nice and tight, because otherwise, you know, don't tighten them, don't over tighten them, otherwise you'll never get them out and you'll just damage the laptop. And that's it. So the SATA SSD, the 8 volt to Evo, is now in there. So all you have to do now is plug the power back in and clone the drive. So that's that. So now we're on to the next step. So as you'll be aware, most SSDs will come with some kind of cloning utility, some kind of software utility, so you can clone your hard drive to the SSD, like this one does. It comes with a disk, but I'm not going to use that because I don't like it. So I'm going to use my own program, and that is Acronis Disk or True Image. Sorry, Acronis True Image. So I'm going to use my own program. It's Acronis True Image. You don't have to use that. You can use any free program that you can get your hands on, or the one that comes with the SSD itself. It's perfectly adequate, but for most people. But I have a copy of True Image I can boot off this USB. So at this point, you don't have to follow my guide to the letter anymore. You can use your own cloning utility. You've done all the important stuff. But yeah, I'm just going to use the cloning utility now just to finish off the video. So I'm going to plug that in to my laptop. It's a very stiff USB port, never ever been used. I'm just going to turn it on. I've plugged it into the mains. I'm just going to try boot with this thing. So, by the way, to get into boot options, you need to keep pressing F12. Once you keep pressing F12, you'll get into the boot manager. So, yeah, as you can see, it talks about Windows Boot Manager and stuff. But what you want to do is you want to change the boot mode settings, and you want to change it to Legacy Boot Mode Secure Boot Off, which is the top option. And oops, click yes, not no, as I did. Click yes, and the laptop will restart. And then all you have to do is, when it comes up again, is click F12. As you can see the 3 drives there. Now all you need to do is, you'll probably see the USB device, which is here, USB storage device. So just click USB storage device and it'll boot. So as you can see, I have a USB boot disk that I made with Easy to Boot. So I don't know. It might be easier for you guys to put it on a disk, or I don't know. But anyway, so I'm going to boot into Acronis TrueImage 2014, which is this one. And I'm just going to boot TrueImage. Okay, so that's kind of interesting. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to back this thing up. I'm going to make an image of this thing to my network in a little while. But first of all, I'm just going to make a clone of this. So I'm going to go to Tools and Utilities and Clone Disk, and then click Manual because I want to choose the partition sizes. Click Next because otherwise it'll just expand the partitions to just evenly. It'll expand them all by a certain amount, which means you lose total storage space because the recovery drive will be bigger than it needs to be. So what you want to do is you click Manual if you're using Acronis TrueImage, and I'm going to select the source hard disk, which is this Western Digital drive here, and click Next. And the destination disk is my Samsung SSD, which you can see has partitions and stuff on it from the previous install, which was on my old M17XR3. So I'm just gonna go ahead and just select that and then click Next, and it's gonna warn me now and says that it's got some partitions already on here and that they're about to be destroyed, which is perfectly fine. I don't mind that at all. I really don't care if it destroys them, to be honest with you, because at the end of the day it's just rubbish data. So yeah, I'm going to click OK. Doesn't matter anymore. Okay, so it says on the next step that you're going to choose the moving method from the old hard drive to the new hard drive, which is a lie because it's from a hard drive to an SSD, but it doesn't matter. So it says proportional as is, which means you'll have, if you choose as is, which is the top option, you'll have a ton of unallocated space at the end of the drive, which is never a good idea, because that means you'll probably not be able to add it to the system drive ever. You'll have to move the partitions around. It's a pain in the ass. So it takes a lot longer. Proportional just changes the original partitions each a bigger size, which means you'll end up wasting space because the recovery drive will be bigger than it needs to be, and so will the system reserve partition and all the rest of it. So yeah, you don't want to choose that. You want to choose Manual and then go Next. By the way, if you want to use Acronis TrueImage, you may be able to get a pirate copy of it somewhere. Hint, hint, hint. Anyway, so I'm not going to tell you where, but yeah, you'll guess. So as you can see, I want to choose all this shit here, and so I want to change the disk layout, but I'm going to edit it, and I want to make it smaller than it was before. So you can see all that free space right at the end of the drive here that you see all that free space here right at the end of the drive. I don't want any free space on that thing, so that's how I want it to be. So I don't want to mess with anything else, but I just don't want that free space. I want it to be completely, that to be the size that it needs to be. I click Accept. You see that unallocated space there? Now what I want to do is I want to do the same to the other ones, which means I want to make it smaller, make the unallocated space at the end, click Accept. Same with this one too, but there isn't any space for that one. That's about as big. There isn't any free space on that one, so that's fine. What about this one? Yep, this one's got a ton of it, so just want to move that thing there, click Accept, and then I want to move this partition here, Accept, and then I want to move that one too, so double click that one, Accept. The idea, what we're doing here, is we're just making the unallocated space to the middle. I want to surround this D drive here, which is the boot drive. So it's D on here, but you'll notice it's named OS. So yeah, you just want to make sure that it's as big as it can possibly be. So that's fine. So yeah, so now you don't have any unallocated space. You've got all the space that you need taken up by this drive here. As you can see, there's not much use space, it's only 20 gigs, and the rest of it is 457.1 gigabytes ready for me to use. So that's fine. So I'm just going to click accept, and that's it. So now all of the drives are the sizes they need to be, because don't forget, the recovery drive is this one at the end here. It doesn't need to be very big. It needs to be the size that it was originally. So what you need to do is you need to do what I did. Same with the other 3 partitions here. You do need them on the hard drive, but you don't want to allow them to take up more space than they need. I mean, you're wasting valuable space on the SSD. So yeah, remember just to shuffle each partition down and get the unallocated space to the very middle of the drive, and then just drag your markers here to the end so that you don't have any space before or after the main partition, and then it's the maximum size it can be. So once you've done that, just click next. I don't think this should take very long. So yeah, so that's the, as you can see, so before on the target disk I had 3 partitions. One was a Hackintosh disk, as you can see it was HFS. This one was the system reserved, and this one was the boot drive here, drive F. So now I've changed it to this, which is much better. So let's just proceed. And yeah, so it's giving me a rundown of everything that's happening there. And it's just copying the partition. So I want this laptop to shut down after it's finished so that we can do something very important in the next step. And that's that. So as you can see, it's not taking too long at all. It's already whizzing along there on the bar, the progress bar. So we'll come back to this when it's finished. Okay, so now that the cloning operation is finished, we're nearly done. But there's a few things we have to do, and that is just make sure it boots first of all. So when you start it back up again, just keep pressing F12 on the keyboard so we can boot from that SSD. So what you want to do is you just want to go to Enter Setup, which is near the bottom. And once you've done that, by the way, I do have the 240 watt adapter, because you can see here. Shows you a lot of information on here, which is quite good. But you want to go to the Boot tab. You want to go to Legacy Boot. And you want to select second hard drive. Okay. Then you want to go to UEFI boot, and you want to select Samsung 840. So to change the values on that, you need to press F5 and F6. So for example, F5 or F6 in this case will change the Samsung SSD to the top drive, which is what I've done. So I've made the Samsung drive the top one, which is fine. As you can see, that's set now. And on Legacy Boot, you need to all you need to do is basically press F6 again, and it'll put the second hard drive above the first one. All that does, by the way, is it makes sure that it boots from the SSD, which is in the second drive bay, before it boots from the hard drive, which it will do because there's an OS on there to boot from. So now all you need to do is press F10 to save and exit, and then click yes to save changes, and then this thing should boot. Oops, booting from my USB stick. Yeah, sorry about that. So I'm going to just restart this now, and then yeah, sorry about that, that was my fault. Okay, so I'm going to select reboot. Remember to unplug your USB stick or take the disc, the cloning disc out first, by the way. I forgot to do that. So here we go. So now we're going to see if it boots. which it should do. Oh, okay, no boot device found. Kind of weird. Let's boot from this Samsung. There we go, it is booting. Takes a little while, but it does boot. Okay, so once you've booted back into the SSD, you just want to make sure that you've actually booted into the SSD rather than the hard drive. So what you want to do for that is right click on the start button and go disk management. Then what you want to do is you just want to check these drives here and make sure that the partition that's on your SSD, which is the 456GB partition here, is listed as the boot drive here. So now once you've done that, you need to download a program called Minitool Partition Wizard Home Edition. It's actually free. The Home Edition is free and it'll do everything we need to do. It's a free download from their site, so if you just Google Minitool Partition Wizard Home Edition, it should come up. So I'm just going to install this. Oops, I don't know what's going on. Okay, click next. Don't know what happened there. Yeah. Click install. Okay. And click finish and it should launch. Then just select Minitool Partition Wizard because we don't want data recovery. We want to boot into the Partition Wizard program. So once you're in there, you can then see the SSDs in the middle here, the 465GB drive, and there is the SSD here, the 80GB SSD that's built into this thing, and the terabyte hard drive at the top. So what you want to do is you want to right click on the terabyte hard drive and click delete all partitions, then click yes, and then what you want to do is you want to oops, clicked the wrong thing. Then you want to, on the unallocated space in the middle, you want to click create, and then you want to call it whatever you want, but I'm going to call mine HDD. And yeah, primary, all that's fine, there's nothing wrong with that. Just leave it all at default, make sure it's a primary partition, it's NTFS, click OK. And then what you want to do is you want to do the same for the 80GB SSD at the bottom. So you want to delete all partitions, click yes. Then you want to click create, and you want to, I'm going to call this MSATA, because that's what it is. So MSATA, which is fine, and all that's fine, primary partition, NTFS, leave it on defaults. So now once you've done that, you just want to click apply, and it'll tell you to turn off the power saving features, but all you need to do is just make sure that the laptop's plugged into the mains, which you should have it that way anyway. So just click yes, and it should carry out all those operations that you want it to carry out. May take a little while, but it will work. It will. There we go. It's finished, and that's it. So now, if we go back to this PC, yeah, you've got the hard drive there, which is storage of 931GB, 80GB on your MSATA SSD, and the SSD, the boot SSD, which is 429GB. Now, the final step here is just to reboot once more. And what you want to do, just click restart. Okay, so once it restarts, you just want to keep hitting F12 so the camera focuses, and then you want to go to change. You want to go to change boot mode setting at the very bottom here. And you want to change it to UEFI boot, secure boot on, and then click yes, and it should now reboot, and should boot into Windows 8 like normal. There we are. while the camera struggles to focus. And there we have it. So now you have officially switched over your boot hard drive and cache drive to one SSD setup, which is exactly what I've done. So if we just go to disk management again, I'll show you the final layout of the disks. So here it is. So here is the final layout of all the disks. That is, as you can see here, the hard drive is used for storage. It's one partition, 1 terabyte hard drive used for storage. Here's the 500 gig SSD partitioned as the original Alienware boot disk, which was the terabyte hard drive, was formatted. So this is a completely, in a sense, it's a stock setup on the new boot drive because I just cloned everything. And then there's the caching MSATA drive, which is now used for storage also. So that's it. So as you can see, it's this thing's lightning quick. It boots up pretty damn quick. So let's do another test. Let's just restart this thing. It boots up incredibly quickly. So I mean, it's pretty damn quick, as you can see. Yeah, and that's it. So all I have to do is put in my password, and off you go. I'm ready to go. You can then open up all the apps you need to open up. Everything works fine. It's exactly as it was previously. So yeah, it's pretty cool. Yeah, so I'm pretty damn happy with it actually. As you can see, everything opens up incredibly quickly. So there we go. That's how to swap your terabyte hard drive and 80 gig caching SSD that comes stock from Alienware to an SSD and use the MSATA cache drive and the hard drive as storage. Thanks for watching.